Would you please stand and join me with a Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd ask that you remain standing. I'll have past President Jason Herbold come forward to share an invocation.
Thank you, President Tony. Let us pray. Dear Lord, we reverence you as the God of mercy, grace, and provision. We thank you for the strength you give us each day. Lord, we attempt to intercede for those that do not have a shelter of their own and for those that cannot find a home that is sufficient to bring them the pride and security we know comes with a sustainable and affordable place to live. Lord, our community is facing a real inflection point. We are successful. We are growing with bountiful wealth that is afforded to many, yet leaving out far too many of our neighbors. Lord, help us find our path forward so all of our citizens, present and future, can find a safe and affordable place to call home. Lord, be with our panelists, leaders, and all participants in the housing industry so they can collectively find solutions that will not only sustain our growth, but enhance the feeling of security and inclusivity that can help our community become a model for all others. In your name we pray, amen.
All right, thank you, Jason, and welcome Rotarians and guests. It's great to see so many of you here on a Monday for an important conversation. We talk often in conversations around the community. You can't have a conversation that doesn't include housing in some of the challenges or opportunities, and we'll get a chance to talk about that. Before we do, we are going to address some Rotary business. And first, we're going to, even before we do that, introduce guests. And Bobby Tibbetts has the mic back there. Let's go ahead and introduce our guests. We have Dan Kipley. You have a guest.
Making me walk.
Thank you, President Tony. Rotary members and guests, with us today, we have Jay Buchholz from Sioux Valley Energy. And Jay is a guest today because his original sponsor just had a baby recently, and so he's off. So I'm pinch hitting, but let's give Jay a warm Rotary welcome.
All right, thanks, Dan. Welcome, Jay. Matt Dittmanson.
Thank you, President Tony. Fellow Rotarians, it's my pleasure. Please stand up. Tasha, my pleasure to introduce to you a colleague, no stranger to this group. She's been here on numerous occasions as a guest, so we're recruiting her to become a member at some point. But this is Tasha Smith. She's head of Sanford's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Department.
Thanks, Matt. Welcome, Natasha. Kayla, you have a guest.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to introduce you to Brianne Becker-Connect, who works for the City of Sioux Falls in the mayor's office doing communications. She's here as an interested potential member. So please help me welcome Brianne.
Thank you, Kayla. Welcome, Brianne. Adam Broyne.
My name is Adam Broyne, and I have the pleasure of introducing you all to a friend and colleague, Merlin Huff, who runs Real Property Management Express here in Sioux Falls.
Thank you, Adam. And welcome. Jeff Eckoff, you have a guest.
President Tony, fellow Rotarians, where are they? Yes. Okay, please stand. I have two guests today. Tim Bouchard is the new exec for the Sioux Council Boy Scouts and an incoming member or applying to be a member. And with him is Terry Sabers from Mitchell, who is retired executive with Muth Electric, works on their housing initiatives over there, and is going to be a member in Mitchell as a Rotarian. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Welcome, Terry and Tim. Mark Kazemius.
President Tony, fellow Rotarians and guests, it's my pleasure to introduce Mike Banworth, longtime colleague. He's the Chief Financial Officer with the Catholic Community Foundation. Mike has also worked with affordable housing for many years. He's on the board of St. Joseph Catholic Housing, which has 26 affordable housing properties in 11 communities.
Thank you, Mark. Welcome, Mike. Luke Tibbetts.
Good afternoon. I'm excited to introduce and welcome a few of my First Premier Bank colleagues. Have Keith Miller and Jordan Huseman. Both are senior business bankers at First Premier. So thank you.
Welcome, Keith and Jordan. Joni Ekstrom.
I'll meet you halfway. You can do it. I'll get you exercising. Thank you, President Tony. Today I have my guest is Shannon Van Buskirk. She works for South Dakota Bio as a member relations specialist.
Thank you, Joni. Welcome, Shannon. And Lynn Keller-Forbes. You have a couple guests.
President Tony and fellow Rotarians, I'm pleased to introduce a couple of my staff members today. With me today is Tricia Vish, who is my senior loan officer with Dakota Business Finance, and Sophie Johnson, who is my community development manager.
Thank you, Lynn. Welcome, Sophie and Tricia. And thank you to those of you who continue to invite others to take part in our Monday programs. A couple other items. I want to just say thank you to those that were involved. We went through Rotary strategic planning last Wednesday afternoon, and excited for some of the outcomes, and we'll be sharing more in the weeks and months ahead. But thank you for that, and we will be looking for additional committee members and volunteers to get more involved and more engaged, and look forward to sharing more with you with that when the time is right. Also, last Wednesday, we started out our morning at the Lutheran Social Services Mentorship Breakfast. Many of you have maybe attended that over the years. And at that breakfast, Tony Burke, who's unfortunately not here today, but who has chaired our Sioux 52 initiative on behalf of Downtown Rotary, accepted this award and a certificate for Downtown Rotary. And we received the Outstanding Community Partnership Award. It's something for you to be proud of and be aware of for the work over the last couple years that this club, whether it's our time, talent, or resources, has pushed to elevate the importance of mentoring in our community. So congratulations to that steering committee and to Rotarians for receipt of that award. You would have seen it in your Monday morning email this morning, an opportunity for you to send off some fifth graders to middle school. It's at Hawthorne Elementary, and you may or may not be aware, but as we have speakers and guests come each Monday, we have them sign a book, a different book each week to give to the students at Hawthorne Elementary, and really to celebrate a number of, and it's explained in that email. I'm not going to read it verbatim, but to celebrate independence, generosity, mastery, and belonging. And that is for students starting in kindergarten through fifth grade. And on the 25th at 2 p.m., for those that are available, you'll be able to join a school assembly where they'll send off the fifth graders on their way to middle school, and invite you to be a part of that. So I want you to be aware of that. Also want you to be aware of Rotary in the Know. Very excited. Startup Sioux Falls is going to allow us behind the scenes for a tour on May 25th, that same day at 4 p.m. 20 spots available, so sign up soon. Confident that those spots will fill up. Also, another opportunity to get engaged. Thursday, June 9th, 4:30 to 6:30, we're going to have a member social at our wine bar. Invite you to take part in that. We had a great turnout last year when we did that, and I look forward to having the same this June. Next, we are going to induct 2 new members, and I'm going to have Matt Paulson and James Gaspar come forward here. And that's one of the things we really enjoy the opportunity to do is invite other leaders to be part of downtown Rotary and be part of our community. And we are up over 40 for the year and on our way to a goal of 60 by year end. And James is one of those, and excited to have James. I'm going to have Matt tell a little bit about James, and we'll go from there.
Good morning, fellow Rotarians. I am pleased to introduce you to James Gaspar as the newest member of our club. James serves as the Vice President at Interstate Office Products. He was a member of Leadership Sioux Falls Class 35 that raised more than $100,000 for improvements at Hayward Park. James is serving on the campaign cabinet for Forward Sioux Falls 2026, and he is a YPN steering committee member as well. He serves as the Taste of Goodness fundraiser chair for the Bishop Dudley Hospitality House. And James really serves in volunteer roles well beyond his years, and I'm sure he will be a key community leader in the years to come. James has degrees from the University of Nebraska and the University of Sioux Falls. He is a devout Catholic, and he is married to his wife, Josie. They have two kids, Michael, who is 4 years old, and Annie, who is 1 year old. So would you all please give a warm Rotary welcome to James Gaspar.
Well, President Tony, Matt, thank you for the invitation and welcome today to join Downtown Rotary. So many of you know or knew my late father, Gary Gaspar, and while he was not a Rotarian, he really embodied the principle of service over self. And it was something he instilled in me from a young age and has been important to my ethos as I've grown and entered into my professional life. So Matt mentions past projects I've been a part of and ways that I've volunteered already to serve the community. And, I know being in a room like this in Rotary with so many of you great individuals that are already doing that, those activities and serving this community, I'm looking forward to really carrying forward that service over self mentality. So thank you for your welcome, and I look forward to being part of the club.
Thank you, James, and thank you for what you've done for our community already, and thank you in advance for what you'll continue to do. Next, we have Dan Kipley introducing Roxanna Mckenna.
Thanks, Tony, fellow Rotarians. Today, I'd like to welcome the next newest member of Downtown Rotary. Roxanna Mckenna is the Executive Director of the Safety Village of South Dakota, located here in Sioux Falls. She oversees all the day-to-day operations, program development, volunteers, and sponsor and donor relationships for the Safety Village of South Dakota. I met Roxanna years ago when I was involved in SME. Roxanna served on the board of directors of the Sales and Marketing Executives of Sioux Falls and is also a past president of that group. She now lives in Brandon with her husband, Don, and her dog, Violet. Roxanna has an adult son, Derek, and two stepdaughters, Stacy and Kate. Hobbies include singing in a band with her husband, maintaining a yard and a pond, and spending much time as possible with her three lovely granddaughters. Please give Roxanna a warm Downtown Rotary welcome.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you all so much, President Tony and Dan also for inviting me here. I'm excited to be part of this organization. My career has spanned mentorship and education. I was at Southeast Tech for almost 20 years, and now I have the wonderful opportunity to represent an organization that focuses on safety for children in not only in our area, but in the state of South Dakota. We do so with camps and fairs and clinics for children. Varying different types. We utilize many of our first responders here in Sioux Falls, our Sioux Falls PD, our Sioux Falls Fire Department, and so many more, as well as the Sheriff's Department and Emergency Management from the county. The Safety Village is and has been an organization for about 28 years. A lot of us don't know who we are, but I'm going to change that so that you do know who we are and all of the goals that we are trying to accomplish. State of South Dakota, I'm going to give you just a quick little brief understanding here of why we do what we do. But the state of South Dakota is the third worst state in the United States for unintentional deaths of children 19 years and under. So the state of South Dakota, there's only 2 other states that have worse numbers than we do per population. So Safety Village of South Dakota wants to change those numbers. And with the help of our first responders, the help of our other organizations such as Sanford and Avera, we're here to make those numbers different. So thank you, and thank you again for welcoming me here to the Rotary.
Once again, welcome Roxanna, and thank you, Dan, for inviting her to be part of Downtown Rotary. All right, now on to our conversation today. We have with us Joan Franken and Jeff Eckoff. We'll start with Joan. Joan is one of the owners and the managing director for Costello Companies and has been with the company for over 27 years. She has been involved in and overseeing the development of 48 affordable housing apartment complexes in South Dakota and Wyoming, creating nearly 2,000 units of affordable housing in several communities. She oversees the management of 5,200 apartment units in South Dakota, Nebraska, Wyoming, and land developments with single-family, multifamily, commercial, industrial lots in Sioux Falls, Harrisburg, and Hartford. She currently serves as a board member for Sioux Empire Housing Partnership, Accessible Housing Advisory Board for the City of Sioux Falls, Southeastern Council of Government, and the Council for Affordable Rural Housing. Welcome, Joan. Jeff Eckoff is the Director of Planning and Development Services with the City of Sioux Falls, a role that he has held since May of 2019. Jeff is originally a Hurley, South Dakota native, a 1982 graduate of the South Dakota State University, and I understand that his career really took off in 1997 when he earned his master's degree from the University of South Dakota. Before being named to his current role, he led the South Dakota Small Business Development Center since 2012. And prior to that, he was the executive director for Lincoln County, Minnehaha County Economic Development Associations from 96 to 2012. Under his leadership, the city areas that he covers in the planning development area include zoning, building services, housing, and code enforcement divisions, and all located at the City Center building. With that, we welcome Joan and Jeff, and thank you to Joel Dykstra, Rotarian, for moderating the conversation today.
Great. Thank you, Tony, for getting us started. Our topic today that we want to talk about is the whole issue of affordable housing and other terms that are sometimes thrown around that may or may not mean the same thing: workforce housing, starter housing, other kinds of similar topics. But I'm not convinced that everybody who uses the term affordable housing is using it to describe the same thing. I'm not sure everybody's definition of affordable housing is the same. I heard somebody recently say that that $1 million house is not what it used to be. And I don't think that's what we're here to talk about today. So, Joan, let's start with you first. What's your definition of affordable housing?
So with Costello Companies, that is what we say is our specialty, our expertise. That's what we primarily provide as affordable housing. When we're talking about it in the realm today, and I will say across the nation, we all know this is an issue nationwide. That term has been used, I think, real loosely. And the mayor, when we sit on the mayor's board, he calls it accessible housing, meaning housing that's accessible for all. And I will say this, I think, a few times during the discussion today, and I have said in the past, the two-word answer to a lot of things is it depends. So in our world, affordable housing and you've heard this, it's that an individual or family pays no more than 30, and I'll say to 35% of their income on housing, meaning their rent, their mortgage payment, their utilities, taxes, and insurance. So if you want to stay with that percentage, we have an issue with that. And so affordable housing, we use the federal programs, the state programs that are out there, and I will talk about the tax credits that we use, the low-income housing tax credits from South Dakota Housing. They also have other programs, Home, which the city of Sioux Falls also administers for some of their projects, housing trust funds, and then the big one that we all knew was in the news and out in the legislature, the $200 million that went to South Dakota Housing for housing opportunity funds. And I can't quote the year that since that's been around, but those are the programs that we use issued by the South Dakota Housing Development Authority to build affordable communities, affordable apartment complexes, because they help get the rents down. And I can go into the specifics of why that's different than market when you're talking about the equity that comes in. I do want to clarify the difference, though, between what people call tax credit housing and subsidized housing, because sometimes subsidized housing is what is thrown out there for low-income housing, and that there's very little of that housing in the city of Sioux Falls. That would be projects that are HUD Section 8 projects, and we also had used the rural development Section 515 programs outside of the city of Sioux Falls to build properties. But that's where a tenant can apply, and based on their qualifications for income, they're strictly qualified at 30% is what they pay for rent. So if that rent on that unit is $700 and they qualify to only pay $100, then HUD or the government pays the rest of that. That is what we term subsidized housing. Tax credit housing, we don't have that unless they get a voucher from Sioux Falls Housing or from the Public Housing Authority in those communities. Okay, we don't have a subsidy on top of that where we do qualify them at usually 30% of their income, but we have all these different rent tiers for a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom unit that they can qualify for depending on the area median income number that they come in at. So tax credit housing, we go and we sell tax credits to investors, which are usually a bank who needs CRA credit. Insurance companies were heavily involved in that. And when the program first started, it was individuals. Dan and Tom Costello went and garnered money from individuals to buy tax credits. And that tax credit equity comes in, and what that does is it lowers our perm loan amount that we need. So then instead of charging where you run your pro forma and it says $1,500 for a rent, we can get that down to say $800 for a rent. Based on that equity coming in. A market rate property, you usually have, I think, 25% of equity that comes in. Ours is anywhere between 60 and 75%, depending on what we sell those tax credits for, of equity that comes in. So that just means the rest of that is perm loans, which we try to keep to a minimum, and then soft money, which are the other funding programs from South Dakota Housing. I know that gets pretty technical, but I wanted to explain the difference between subsidized housing and tax credit housing. We're not getting any more subsidized housing. So truly those low income tenants and families, that is very, very limited in the city of Sioux Falls. Right now, the only way we can bring in more, I call it the HUD Section 8 to put on a property, is if somebody across the state or sometimes in another state, they sell their apartment complex and those new owners don't want that subsidy. Then we find out about that and try to put that on a property, but it takes a number of years and it's very challenging. So workforce housing, I know that's a question on here too. So we say with our tax credit housing, we go up to, can go up to 80% of the area median income, but you get actual working individuals at the 50% to 80%. So we say we provide some affordable workforce housing, but you're looking at, I would say, the Clint Ackermans, the Kelly Nielsen's of the world, even Eagle right now building in Sioux Falls. they get some other dollars and they try to keep that for workforce housing in those rounds, and where their rents may not be the high rents that you can garner downtown, they're more for workforce housing.
So just before we move on, just for order of magnitude, how many units would you say there are in the city of Sioux Falls that are in that subsidized category or in the workforce category?
And so I can take it from the city of Sioux Falls. They put out they do a vacancy survey twice a year, but it's only for those that report. So let me say that. So HUD units, the number that report are 236. We have quite a few of those units in the city of Sioux Falls. So that might be our entire number that we're reporting. So we have the HUD Section 8 housing where their vacancy rate jumped to 1.35% and was at 0.43%, which meant one vacant unit back in July of 2021. Right now, we're looking at their 3 vacant units across that entire supply. We have quite a waiting list. We have to work through the rules on the waiting list, and we fill them as fast as they come open. So yeah.
So
it's
about 200.
I would say there are more. There are more that probably don't report,
Okay.
but I believe it's definitely less than 500 units in the city of Sioux Falls. And for tax credit units, Jeff and I were having that discussion too. The tax credit properties that are reported are 2,217 units. Okay, well, we in the city of Sioux Falls have 1,670 of those that we manage. And so I know Lloyd has some, and there are some other companies that have a few, but that is also limited. And we're looking at just our portfolio of less than 2% vacancy right now. So again, we fill them as fast as they come open or as fast as we can turn them. And the vacancy rate in those units they reported 5.14, which seemed a little high for that. But
So Jeff, if you just take those numbers and just, for generosity's sake, let's say they're wrong by 50%. So there's maybe 500 of the subsidized ones, maybe 3,000. So maybe 3,500 houses below market price in the city of Sioux Falls. How many people do you think are looking for houses that can't afford them?
So that's a great question. So we did a housing assessment. We had Augie do a housing assessment for us last year. And the biggest gap is shown is about 4,500 homes short of those that are in that low income category. So you're talking 30 to 50% AMI, that type of thing. And just for reference, they just came out with new standards. So for a family of 4, the 100% AMI in Sioux Falls right now is $90,000. And so you can extrapolate that up and down based on number of family members and income. And so what it showed was, I mean, there's some interesting things in the demographics of Sioux Falls. And a couple of the fastest growing groups are high income, 100 households, so it's usually 2 earners making $100,000 and more, and also families with no children, which I think reflects younger people delaying children and older and retirees that are moving back to Sioux Falls. But with that said, those numbers grew, but the numbers of those in these income categories did not shrink by any means. And so what it did is it's creating a bigger gap. So circling back to Joel's question, 4,500 is what that survey identified. We create, I mean, in the last 2 years, we've created permitted 5,800 housing units, apartments, single family homes, townhomes, twin homes in this town. Year to date through April, we've already permitted 2,000 units in this town. So the number of units, if you extrapolate 2.5, 2.4 people per household, kind of matches our growth. But the problem becomes the gap between those that are the hardest to serve and the most in need. And as Joan did a great job of illustrating, they're complicated programs, they're expensive programs, and to get traction on those with the amount of money you need to really make impact is difficult, because it's a heavy lift and it's a high lift on a dollar per unit basis.
So maybe Jeff, you could also elaborate a little bit on the mayor's city housing or the Accessible Housing Advisory Board that has been put into place that Joan serves on, and you know, how big is that group, and what is their mandate, or what is their remit to, what are they studying, what are they trying to solve?
So the city had an affordable housing advisory board that wasn't very active, and the county had a homeless advisory board. And so a couple years ago, the mayor, working with the county, consolidated those two boards into the accessible housing advisory board. And so it's kind of a two-part mission. They oversee the HUD funds. As an entitlement community, we get about $1.5 million of HUD funds every year. We match that with about $500,000 of general funds. It's been that level of giving for of appropriation from the feds for a long time, or a minimum state. So that's kind of what we get. So they kind of oversee the applications for those funds, working with Costello, working with Lloyd, working with our partners at Southeast Development Foundation, as well as Affordable Housing Solutions. And then also their charge is to come up and provide direction on programs for what we call workforce housing, which are those 80% and below. These are people who are working kind of paycheck to paycheck, if you will. They're probably in that $18, $20, $22 an hour jobs, trying to find ways for them to get into a housing that's accessible to them, so they can be successful at that 30 to 35% of their income. So we got a lot of people living in apartments and living in homes where they are spending more like 40 and 50% of their income on their housing. And so they're stressed that way. And so it's really a charge to try to find ways to encourage that workforce housing, especially in the face of the population growth, job growth, and those things we're experiencing in Sioux Falls right now.
So Joan, you've looked into this new program, which is kind of get everything out of the table here. Where are the sources of solutions? And then we'll talk about kind of what the demand side looks like. But the legislature this past year passed a bill that would apply $200 million of the money that the federal government provided in the ARPA bill that was passed in February, March, early this year. The legislature has created a fund of $200 million. That fund is supposed to go, I think 30% of that number is allocated or available to the Sioux Falls area, to the city or to the MSA. I don't know how that's defined. And in fact, I do know how it's defined. It is the city of Sioux Falls. And then there's a portion of it was set aside for Rapid City, and the rest of it is for all the smaller towns and communities across the state.
So the $200 million, 30% of that is for communities over 50,000. So we have to share that money with Rapid City. Right. We can't have the whole $60 million, and which we would like, but we can't have that. And I'm in Rapid City too, so I shouldn't say that. But 70%, the larger dollar amount, 140 million, is for communities under that. So, and then if there's money left over, and again, the time frame hasn't been put on this. I will say I had a conversation. Lorraine Pollock is the executive director of South Dakota Housing. Have known her for years. And Friday, just contacted her. How you coming? How you doing on the 200 million? Because some of you know what we do here, and we're getting our applications ready for the tax credit and home programs and housing trust fund programs, and housing opportunity funds are part of that, and they're due the end of August. Well, we've already started working on that, but we don't know what the magic number is that we can apply for if we have gaps, which we do have gaps. But anyway, she said we're working on it, and I can't. She knows that I was speaking today, and this is the information that I'm going to relay. So the $200 million bill, HB 1033, came out, and I will say, because I think we all know, the governor was not exactly thrilled with how that came out and how all of that money went to South Dakota Housing, okay? So she wrote a letter after that bill was passed, and they have this letter, South Dakota Housing does, and they're mindful of this letter, okay, that she wrote, and how the money was not allocated the way the governor wanted, but that Lorraine and her team are speaking to attorneys, and that they have two main objectives for this, and they're going to try to get all of the specifics worked out by July, which gives you a month to put, or depending on their application cycle, I will say. So meeting the intent of the legislation and the legislators that worked on this, meeting the intent of that. And then number two, not requiring more than what is needed. So housing opportunity funds over the past few years, and we do have, Lynn has used those funds, I believe. So a few years ago went and testified that those funds are great to help the bigger complexes that we're doing fill some gaps because they come in as soft money. But where they really make an impact is in the smaller communities. And so those that are in the Sioux Falls MSA that are right outside the city of Sioux Falls should really take advantage of that $140 million that is there and go after it. Because we're not going to go to, I want to remember where I was asked to go to, Burke, South Dakota, and do 4 units. We're just not going to do that. But they may have somebody there that can apply for those funds that can do that. And so anyway, those smaller communities have used them in the past. Lynn has used them in the past for the housing that she has done. And for us, they're a gap filler because right now I'll just say there's still some big gaps. Interest rates are going up. Construction costs have not come down and have gone up since last year. I will say our tax credit pricing is still the same that it was. So I'm not getting any more for selling these tax credits, or we're not getting any more selling these tax credits. And we're still limited with the rents that we can charge. So we have substantial gaps, hoping that some of that will help. But depending on how they write this and how it comes out with all the different rules, and are they going to want it all applied for this year? That's something they have to determine too. And so in the past couple years, housing opportunity funds, they've been oversubscribed and they haven't, they've allocated all the funds that they have. So while this seems like a great windfall for housing, there to be allocated South Dakota housing, they're really taking their time and being mindful on how they're writing this so it's not too restrictive.
So Jeff, was that program, that money, is there a match requirement on the city, or is there some other strings attached to this before we apply that cash to some solution?
We haven't heard. It all depends, right? We don't know.
It all depends. And it depends on if it's a grant or a revolving loan. And so the grant, that will be that the developer, it'll be like a third. The developer can get a third as a grant, or the homeowner, then they can go to the city for a third. And then there's the other
That's right, third, yeah.
funds. Yep, a third as far as the grant.
And there was discussion. So the legislature did a summer study last year on housing. They had 4 meetings across the state, 2 in Pierre, 1 in Rapid, 1 here, and heard from numerous people testifying about what they thought would help affordable housing across the state. And there was a lot of discussion about that third about, you know, and so you get to a smaller town, right? You get to Burke, South Dakota, since we're picking on them. Hurley, let's pick on Hurley.
Let's pick on
Hurley. And trying to get a builder to come in there and then have them put up a third, you know, and where is the city going to come up with their third, right? So there's discussion about the city being able to do a tax increment financing district in order to come up with their third and the developer's third, and that would incent the process. But it's just really, there was a lot of good ideas discussed in the summer study, and there's some legislators here that were part of that. I mean, at the end of the day, there's a lot of bills coming through, there's a lot of stuff going on, and it kind of devolved down into a discussion about where those funds were going. And some very broad guidelines, and then I think South Dakota Housing, everybody else has to figure it out after that. So there were some legislative changes that we had hoped that would happen with the way we could, as cities, could leverage funds through TIFs and that type of thing. That did not happen. We were going to go ahead with some of that anyway, but it's just a complicated part. So the truth, what I saw through a lot of the legislation was, at the end of the day, the things we were trying to do really help small towns more than they help big towns because of the flexibility and things, and for them to try to get that additional investment. But it unfortunately got diverted into a conversation about, we want to make sure Rapid City Sioux Falls don't take all the money. And that's what actually killed the bill the year before too, in the 2020 session as well. So we'll see how it washes out, and I don't envy Lorraine's job to sort this out.
No.
So are you suggesting that the fact that they had a legislative summer session didn't solve this problem?
As a past legislator, I'll defer that to you, and we'll move on to the next question.
I can't even remember what summer studies I was on. So just one. So what is the city looking at, Jeff? What kind of solutions or what kind of tools are available or going to be
Certainly
under consideration from the city?
So thank you. Yeah, so it's kind of a multifaceted approach. One of the things we looked at were design standards for subdivisions and maybe lessening some of the requirements on street width and some things like that. There were a couple things that were brought forward. We're also looking at, looking at adding another zoning classification to increase density along like arterial streets like Minnesota Avenue, that type of thing. We've been working with some developers. We think we'll be able to roll that out to relax some of the requirements so that it's easier for them to build more density in. We've rolled out a tax increment financing program for affordable housing, minimum 30 units, and then some income or price restrictions based on South Dakota first-time home buyers guidelines. We actually have a developer right now who's taking a really hard look at that, and we think he'll implement that next building season, so we're excited about that. We've set up some direct loan programs for multifamily with long amortizations, balloon payments, and then another big effort for us will be neighborhood revitalization or infill development. We provide funds to homeowners to fix up their homes. So for example, they'll get a deferred loan that'll sit alongside their primary mortgage, and they won't have to pay on it. It's a 0% interest, and it becomes payable as a lump sum to us when they sell the home. So even if they satisfy the original mortgage, they don't have to have their cash flow doesn't get affected by that loan. The appreciation in the property will take care of that. So that's like to replace a roof, to put in new windows, major expenses that these homeowners are not able to accomplish. We've always had federal funds to do that, but some of the funds that the city has put up has really helped expand that to those that are like that. We have people come in that aren't at the 80%, they're at 81%, they're 85%. We do their income and we can't help them with their current funding. So we hope to expand and really focus on those core neighborhoods. We have a partnership with Southeast Development Foundation on recycling homes. It's been very successful. If you would go to those of you who know where the old Boys and Girls Club is, about 14th and Sneeve. If you drive up there today, that's a whole new that's a whole new neighborhood. And we've recycled homes that the city's had that we buy for drainage or other reasons. There's developers that provide homes that Lynn goes in, totally refurbishes them, takes them down on the studs, all new walls, all new floor coverings, all new mechanical, electrical appliances. The beautiful homes are done, and they help revitalize that neighborhood, and they fit in the character of that neighborhood. So those are efforts that we've been doing. We're in the process of acquiring land, especially looking for land in the infill, in the core of the city, which is difficult. We had a situation here a while back. We thought we had a really good lead on a significant parcel of land where we could have put 50 to 60 homes. Any of you involved with housing knows how this story goes. We make an offer, it gets upped, and it got to the point that they wanted more money from the city for those lots than they had the lots advertised for. And so we had to walk away from it. So we have the same challenges that everybody else has. But those are the programs that we have right now that we're looking at, both with zoning. We're making sure that our building codes are reasonable and we're not putting undue cost on that process as well for building. We're trying to make funds available, but these housing projects, as you can imagine, are difficult, they're complicated, and they're cost-driven right now. The availability of land, and the cost of materials and the availability of labor, we have the same constraints and challenges that all the other developers in town are having.
So let's kind of change tracks here a little bit. Talk order of magnitude. I mean, the city reported last year that our population grew by 6,750. For the first time, that was a 3.45% increase, and it crossed the 200,000 threshold. So we're now a city of more than 200,000 people. 6,750 people came to town. You know, maybe divide that number in four. It could be 1,000, 1,500 homes that increase need, and that's before the new Amazon warehouse opens or the other new businesses that are coming to Foundation Park, just picking on just that concentration. And before they start hiring, I'm asked pretty regularly, where are these new employees going to come from? But maybe the question for today is, where are they going to find a house? Where are they going to find a place to live? What's the solution, and what kind of a scale is this problem? If it's really 1,000 or 1,500 living units, and we're building, what you say the annual statistics are for new homes and apartments?
Yeah, we permitted about 2,800 last year of total living units, but that's apartments and everything else. So that, that question gets asked all the time. We've got these jobs, we've got this tremendous growth, we've got a lot of people come from out of state, what's going to happen? There's a lot of interesting headwinds going on, particularly in the single family market. We've got a large number of people coming from out of state, bringing an inflated amount of equity into the deals. I was just talking to Lynn beforehand. There's a home that she's working with. Thought it was, I think we listed it 230. It's one of the projects turned around, and offers came in and 260 cash, right? Those types of things happen. We've got a lot of investors buying homes that are flipping the homes and renting the homes. We've got a lot of homes being bought and being converted to Airbnbs because that's an attractive market right now as well. And so there's a lot of factors that go into that. And as a city in particular, I think you've got to be very careful about how you approach messing with the market, because the market kind of takes care of itself, and you don't want to go in and upset that and overly subsidize or overly incent something. But by the same token, there's been a discussion about limiting. So when a home goes on the MLS, let's put a moratorium for 10 days. They can only accept offers from owner-occupied buyers. Well, that's great, but it won't take long for sellers to understand that I just wait 10 days and I can take whatever offer I want. And so, there's things, there's great ideas and great heart behind it and great intentions behind it. But I think we as a city and all of us need to really think through what are the unintended consequences of whatever is done. And right now it's just an overheated market. So I think in time, some of this, we've got higher interest rates. I think as the rest of the country settles down with COVID, I think some of that influx will kind of level out, and we'll see what happens. We are projecting about another 3% growth in population this year on the high end. But then after that, we kind of think it's going to go back down to that 2.1% that we have enjoyed for 30 years. But time will tell what happens with that. But again, I think there's a lot of factors out there based on what's going on in the rest of the country and how people perceive, moving towards the land of the free and all that good stuff that's been happening too. But we've just had some major disruptions in our market that this kind of, the stars aligned in a bad way that kind of exacerbated all types of issues. And then we had supply chain, labor shortage and all that. So hopefully that'll come back in line and we'll start having normal absorption. Employers will adjust based on what the true labor supply washes out to be. I mean, those of you in that world know that the first question they ask is about labor supply. And given where we are with labor supply, it's interesting to me that companies still choose to move forward with 1,000 job projects. But you also look at a very robust and a very productive labor force. We've got one of the most productive labor forces in the country, and they hear that story. And it elevates the wages. That's a challenge for small businesses and other things that come with that. But I think it's good news in the long run for us. We just have to catch up. Like I tell people, it's not like people are moving where we didn't expect them to. You're just moving there a whole lot faster than we expected them to.
So, Joan, this may be a little out of the Costello business model, but moving beyond the affordable or subsidized or in any way controlled rent market, how would you define a starter home for young families? I mean, where are the young families of Sioux Falls, the people who are coming to work at Amazon and other places? What is it going to take? We don't hear very many $200,000 houses in Sioux Falls anymore.
No. And I'll just say a goal of the low-income housing tax credit program is so that they have more discretionary income to save for a home. We don't want, or I shouldn't say we don't want, the goal of that is not to have tenants that live there for 20 years. And the goal is for them to save, and then the next step is to get into a single family home, which is, we had single family housing developments. And it is so challenging right now. You're not going to go out and find a new home for $200,000. And I had a conversation with Brent Adney, who runs the single family home division at South Dakota Housing last week. And he was saying hot off the presses, they just increased their first time home buyer, the limit on that house from 300 to, I'm a note person here, $340,000. And so repeat first time home buyers is 413 to 416. I said, well, has the interest rate hike here over the last week, has that caused you to slow down? He goes, they're not going to bat an eye at that interest rate. The issue is the supply. There's no supply, or they get outbid. You've got somebody's going through the process, and the lenders in the room here, you have heard this, 20 times to Sunday over the last year, that it's higher than the list price. They're getting outbid, they're losing the home. Because somebody comes in with that cash and the offer, and they don't get that home anymore. That affordability piece is an issue right now. And I sit here and think of first-time home buyer, or the first home that we had too, and then think, and Brent said when he started, I think it was like at $68,000 or $60,000, and he's been there since 1993. But he said, would you have ever thought that a first-time home buyer home would be $340,000? But what do you give for $340,000 today is the question.
I think too, so if you look at two levels, right? So one of the things with new construction, with what we're hoping to do is offer homes that are at that 250 to 300, which is one level. But I think if you really drill down on young families, really affordable, that's where that revitalization core, right? They're buying homes in the VA, they're buying homes in Hilltop, they're buying those types of homes that are 1,000 square feet or less. Maybe 800-900 square feet, 2-car garage, maybe 1-car garage, maybe for sure. Those are the homes where these young families are going. I know we changed some zoning ordinances a couple years ago because there were parking restrictions that we relaxed, so these young families could have a second car in the driveway and get by with a single car garage. And those, I think, are the home. That's why we're so invested. That's why we're so directed to really invest in those core neighborhoods, to make sure they're investable, so that somebody comes in and says, look, I'm going to buy a home here for $275,000, right? This is my life savings. I want to protect that investment. I don't want to do that in a home that's in a neighborhood that's declining. I want to do that in a neighborhood that is staying stable and increasing, just like all of us want to do with our investment when we make our home. And so it's incredibly important to us to preserve those cores, put that money into there, and provide those opportunities. It's kind of that broken window thing. If Steve fixes his home up, then Ron will fix his home up, and then Tom will say, well, if those guys can do it, I can do it. And that's the philosophy that we really have. So we really see a lot of the housing funds. And by the way, I give credit to City's Council, who put additional $6 million of funds into housing funds for land acquisition, neighborhood revitalization, mortgage assistance for public service employees, those types of things, and for police officers and firefighters and that type of thing. Again, to try to incent not only new development, affordable development in the new developments, but a lot of that aimed at the core and redevelopment of our core neighborhoods in our city.
Now, everybody in the room will have noticed that when we used to talk about single-family housing, we had an idea of what that looked like, and there was so much yard and so much of this frontage. Today, we're talking about a lot more townhome developments, row houses, as they used to call them in the cities. Where does that class fit in? I mean, how is that part of the solution as you see it?
So a lot of that, from our standpoint, the amount of money we put into a home to help, we see a lot more twin homes because of the cost. And our stance on that, as long as it's something that's home ownership, that they can get equity and make it to that next step, we're all in favor. So a lot of our like our TIFs and some of that, we look at both single family and townhomes, twin homes. Again, as long as they have ownership and they can gain equity.
That said, there is a part of the market that isn't looking to buy a house. There are people who want to rent, and they're looking for apartments or townhomes, rental townhomes. We're seeing lot more apartments than the city has ever permitted in the past. What do you see as the pushback to that? I mean, we're getting some neighborhood opposition to new apartment developments. We're seeing some additional trends that people don't want. They'll take smaller square footage, but they want more amenities. And it's not making them cheaper. So
No.
how do we see this developing in the city and in the market?
I think, and that's just where I wish Jeff was here, because Jeff Nelson was supposed to be here. I'm just filling in. He would have a better lens on what people want.
So we'll give him a chance. We'll do this again, I'm sure.
So to Joel's point, I mean, we hear that now that buyers or people like my kids' age, right? They don't want a roommate. They're willing to, they're minimalist, right? Our kids, like, we try to give them their stuff and they don't want any of it. We just keep piling it up in our house. And, and they are, they're more about experiences, less about stuff. And so I think in the long run, you're going to see, they don't need the big yards, and some of that will change, and that'll hopefully help the market. But in the short term, yeah, the cost and the amenities that they want, that's what they want to see is, I'll have a lesser space, but I want community space here. I want these other things. I want an exercise room. I want all these other amenities in that. I don't know in the long run what happens, in our housing market, but that's what we see as kind of a short-term trend right now with some of the buyers, some of the renters that we're seeing anyway.
So we talked about this, the lower income side of the market. Now with the other end of the market, the rents continue to go up, the costs continue to go up, apartments continue to get built. When do we run out of affordability on the top end?
On the top end, that's a good question. So I talked to Denise Hanslick with the South Dakota Multi-Housing Association, and because we're so limited, we have very few, very, very few market rate units. But what she's seeing is anywhere from 3 to 33% for an increase in renewals for the rents. And we've seen the news stories, and we've heard the stories of people saying their rent went up, $900. And that's going on. The affordability with our incomes in Sioux Falls, that's great that happened, and incomes are based on the county statistics. So, but I just want to go over what the rents now, what we could charge in our AMI ranges. And some of you may gasp at this, I think. So in a one bedroom, if we go down to 30%, and this includes utilities, $510. And that's at 30% area median income. What is 30%? It's anywhere, let's say a single person, it's $19,000 a year that we can charge that $510. Okay, it goes up to, for 60% area median income, which still falls under our tax credit realm, and in our affordable world, that's like where is the most that we can charge on a one bedroom, $1,020. Now, do we charge that? No. But can we charge that according to the tax credit guidelines to that? Yes, including utilities. And these jumped, and so you have a double-edged sword. You want incomes to go up, but it also says you can charge more for rents. So our rents are approaching, in that 60% range, are approaching market rate rents, because it goes from $1,020 for a one bedroom, and this is at 60% area median income, all the way up to $1,415 for a three bedroom. Again, does that sound affordable? To a lot of people and a lot of families, individuals and families, it doesn't. And that's the tier that we have a hard time qualifying for. Some don't understand, why is that rent that high? Or, anyway, I thought I could qualify for this. They can't, they fall out. So it's challenging right now. But those rents went up. Again, can we charge that? Yes. Do we charge that? No. And try to keep it. That's what our goal is and our mission is. But we've also seen our expenses go up, our wages go up. And again, we're capped at those rents. And 60% is a tier, but we have several tiers. And we have to be mindful of that, because the project still, the lenders in the room here, We have a requirement that we have to meet. And so
You still have to make your loan payment?
we still have to make our loan payments on those properties. Yes, yes.
Well, I hope that that everyone has found this interesting and informative today. I think we're running into our deadline here. Maybe, Jeff, you've got anything you'd like to add just as a closing statement?
Just in closing, I hope today you gain some insight to how complicated housing is and how many different moving parts there are and the differences between workforce housing and what we think of traditional as affordable housing and the types of costs that go into that. So for example, there was a groundbreaking a couple weeks ago, $1.6 million for 8 units and about $500,000 in grants between the city and banks and private donors to make that affordable. So just think about those numbers and trying to make those units so they're affordable for people. So it's just the dollars and cents are tough. And so those that say, why can't we create 1,000 housing units? There's reasons why you can't just snap your fingers and create 1,000 housing units.
There's no magic bullet. And so to answer that, and even the $200 million is not a magic bullet to solve the issue. And like I go through, it's more complex than that. And it really depends. I was asked by Jeff Nelson, he wanted to spring a question on me and say, if we give you all $200 million, how many units can you build? And Jim Schmidt laughs because yes, give us all the money and it will produce units. And I said the answer is, again, it depends. What are you looking for here? 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, the combination. How low do you want to go for rents? And then I can, pencil it out and say how many we can build. But so our 62 unit complex on the east side of Sioux Falls under construction, $12 million. So Jeff says, okay, 900 units. You can build us 900 units in 18 to 24 months. I said, no. I said, first of all, where are we going to pull the labor to build this? The supply chain, we're still having issues with supply chain. So this is he said 3 or 4 years. And I go, you extend that out, the number of units produced goes down because the costs are still going to go up and interest rates are going to go up. So there's no magic bullet. It's complicated. It's a big conversation. It will continue to be. I thank the mayor and the staff at the city of Sioux Falls because they're working on that. Yes, I sit on the board, but we're working on it. We're all working on it. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both for being here, and everybody, if we could give them a round of applause.
Thank you. Well, thank you both. And thank you, Joel. Complex issues, and we'll take public-private partnership and a lot of work. And thank you for the work that you continue to do in that area. Looking ahead to next Monday, we have a leadership transition happening at our Sioux Empire United Way. And we're going to have an opportunity to honor and thank longtime downtown Rotarian Jay Powell, who has served as president of the Sioux Empire United Way for 20 plus years. We're also going to have an opportunity to welcome our new president CEO, Alan Turner II. So Rotarian Joel Sylvester will sit down with both of them, as well as current Sioux Empire United Way board chair, Brenda Kibbe, to discuss the past, present, and future of our local Sioux Empire United Way. So please join us next Monday. In the meantime, have a great week and look forward to seeing you next Monday.